Welcome to the Fancy Scientist podcast. I am so excited that you are here. Today, we are talking about everything to do with internships in wildlife careers. So that includes ecology, conservation biology, zoology, environmental sciences. What you're going to learn today is going to apply to all of those different types of careers. I'm Dr. Stephanie Manka, a wildlife biologist who's been in this field since 2003. And my podcast is about everything wildlife, conservation, nature, and of course, helping you get your dream job in wildlife. We're going to talk about what internships are, how they differ from other opportunities like volunteering and jobs. We are going to talk about the hot topic of unpaid versus paid internships, how to find them, of course, how to get them, but do you even really need them? You might be surprised by what you learn today. Even if you are not looking for internships, but you are interested in working in the wildlife field, what you're going to learn today is most definitely going to apply. So make sure you stay tuned and listen to this whole episode. I have been seeing so many amazing postings for internships. So I decided for the month of December in my Getting a Job in Wildlife Biology Facebook group, join if you haven't, that I would talk about everything internships. And the most important part is I want to help you get those internships. So the tips you are going to learn today are going to raise your game. What is an internship and how does it differ from other temporary jobs or volunteering? Internships are different because there is a different intention and purpose part of this work arrangement. And the biggest difference is that internships are meant to include more professional development. Now, this doesn't always happen. You can get internships that are not that great, but in reality, your employer should be more of a mentor to you. They should be guiding you more in your career process, in your trajectory. It's not just paid work. So that is one of the biggest differences. And then the other big difference is that it's temporary. But in wildlife fields like ecology, zoology, etc., a lot of jobs when you're starting out are temporary. So this aspect of the internship is not too unique. Quite often in wildlife fields, people work field assistant positions where they are working for, let's say, several months over the summer. This on the surface might not appear that different from an internship, but like I said, from the employer's standpoint, you are supposed to provide more mentoring, more career development, more professional assistance. For example, when I worked at the North Museum of Natural Sciences, one of the things that we would do for our summer interns is provide a science communication series. We created essentially this series of informational sessions and also interactive sessions as well, where they learned how to communicate science professionally to a public audience from all different people at the museum. Of course, it was us museum scientists, but we also incorporated other people from different positions within the museum that were not scientists. So these included communications professionals. They had classes in YouTube, Twitter, public speaking, things like that, for example. Things like that as an example. Whereas if I was hiring somebody for the summer to do field work for me, say I am running a bird project and I need somebody to help me conduct point counts, I wouldn't have to build in professional training. Now, later on, I'm going to discuss if that always happens, but that is the theory behind an internship. That is the concept, and that is how it differs. I get the impression from a lot of people that internships are really coveted or desired. A lot of people think that you need internships to succeed. They're not just focused on getting experience, they're focused on getting specifically an internship. They think that it will get them ahead. And the reason why I think this is because going back to the concept of an internship, I think that people think that internships are more like hand-holding or shadowing. It's like when I imagined what graduate school would be like. I knew that I would have my own research project and be conducting my own research and data analysis and doing things on my own. But I also had this vision of almost like an apprenticeship where I would be working in the lab alongside my advisor and kind of like watching her do things and learning from observation, learning from her doing things. But in reality, this is not what it was like at all. And this can happen with your internship as well. You might be under a program that is by internship name only, but in reality, your tasks might not differ that much from a regular field position. And this would also happen with us at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. And this would also happen both in the jobs that I worked in and in positions that I hired for with interns. Sometimes the jobs were essentially the same. The duties were the same. Like I said, because like I mentioned before, if it was an internship, I really did go out of my way to more professional mentoring. But you can also get professional mentoring just depending on who your employer is. If it's somebody who really cares about professional development, who really cares about you as a person and seeing your success, it doesn't matter if it's an internship or not. And make sure to check out podcast number 89 with Scott Putnam. He was an excellent mentor. He's a recently retired fisheries biologist at Idaho Fish and Game, and he really cared about his students, whether they were doing an internship or whether they were working with him or even volunteering with him. So you can get similar experiences whether it is an official internship or not. On the flip side of that, you can also get bad experiences with internships. Just because somebody calls it an internship doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get that professional development. It really depends on who you're working for. One of the things that I want you to do is get rid of the concept that you have to have an internship. You don't have to have an internship for success. What is really important is the experience that you get. So more on that later. I think people get that impression just from the word internship and not necessarily our field. For instance, let me read this statement from a PBS article. It says that according to the National Association of Colleges and Employers, more than half of internships lead to full-time jobs, and people with internship experience received more job offers and higher starting salaries than those without it. That may happen in other fields, but it doesn't necessarily happen in our field. Now, there are key points in that statement that I'm going to discuss later on, but it's not necessarily the result of an internship. You don't need that word internship. It's the stuff within the internship that is important, and we will get into that. Before we move on, I also want to say that an internship often is not reflective of what you are going to be doing later on in your career. I think a lot of people think that it provides this glimpse of what it's like to be a wildlife biologist. And there are some aspects of truth to that. For example, when I worked at Disney's Animal Kingdom, I was an intern in the lab there. We were conducting hormone assays, studying the captive wildlife, studying the captive wildlife there for management and also for their reproductive success. And then I also worked alongside the wildlife biologist there who was studying animals on undeveloped Disneyland. I got to go with her and conduct alligator surveys and bird surveys and things like that. So I did get a taste of what it's like to be a wildlife biologist, but I didn't see the other aspects of her job, which included being in the office, writing reports, conducting data analysis, all of that stuff. And I'm sure at the time we talked about it, but I didn't really fully understand it. So with your internship, it's important to understand that you're doing tasks that are entry level, and these are not necessarily going to be the things, or probably they're not likely going to be the things that you're going to be doing later on in a permanent position. This is why understanding what you want to do is key. And I have 2 resources linked below that will help you do that. The first is make sure you come to the Becoming a Wildlife Professional trainings that I do. These are free. I do them every couple of months. I do them live on Zoom just just enroll, sign up at the link, and you will get the email alerts when the next free training is. And we go over the 3 pillars to becoming a successful wildlife professional. These are essential. If you do these things, you can't not get a job, honestly. I've never seen it not work when people do these 3 things. The other thing is you really want to understand the job that you want. This is part of the 3 pillars, but I have a free resource for you, the job tracker. And when you use the job tracker, you are going to start tracking the jobs that you're interested in and really starting to understand them, to nitpick them apart, to understand the nuances, and the details within the jobs and what they entail, so that you make sure that you are setting yourself up for success. To cover the major points, internships are different from other experiences, but you definitely don't need to set you up for success. What we really need is experience, and we'll go into the details of why experience is so important. I'm not going to say don't go after internships. Internships are great opportunities to build experience. But if you're not finding internships, although we will go over how to find them, if you're not finding internships or you're not getting them, I'll also help you with that. Then you want to focus on just getting experience. Don't get so narrowed in on having to have an internship to be successful. You do not need it. You need experience. There are different job types that you can get in wildlife fields. Obviously, a permanent job, which is what everyone ultimately wants. This is a job that is full-time, salaried, it doesn't expire. And then there are temporary positions. These are usually field assistant jobs that last for several months. What you're doing is you're helping somebody out when there's a lot of work to be done. Here in North America, we have very seasonal patterns. So in the summertime, you are going to have a lot more work in bird research, in reptiles, amphibians, insects, plants, because it's summertime and that's when things are out and about. So field positions, they only last for a couple of months and they can be unpaid or paid. Then, of course, there is volunteer work. And then there are internships, which can also be paid, unpaid. And then we are also going to go over, you can even pay to do internships, which I know a lot of people think is crazy, but it does happen in our field. Let's talk about getting internships in wildlife careers. First, in order to get the internships, you have to find them. I run a free private Facebook group called Getting a Job in Wildlife Biology, and whenever somebody joins, I email them and ask them what their biggest struggle is. And a lot of people talk about not being able to find jobs, which include internships. I totally understand this because when you search wildlife in LinkedIn and Indeed, although those job boards are good, you can get a lot of things that are not relevant. So I have compiled a list of the best job boards in wildlife biology, conservation, ecology, etc. careers. So make sure you check that out in the description below. The most obvious way to find internships is to use these job boards to look for advertised postings. But like I said, a lot of people have a difficult time with this. In addition to the postings, you also want to make sure to look at organizations you are interested in interning at and look directly at their websites. Honestly, it's not uncommon in our field for organizations to just post directly to their websites. I know it's a pain in the butt because you have to check them individually, but if it's a place you really want to work at, then it is worth it. In the blog post that I mentioned, I also include a list of great organizations to work for and to check out. This blog post has tons and tons of resources. One tip I'm really loving, and actually was the inspiration for this whole series on internships, is LinkedIn. I am becoming a lot more active on LinkedIn. I took this free training that was super helpful. LinkedIn, I now know how to use it for wildlife careers. And this is something I am in the process of teaching my students. I already teach them how to use it, but I found just so many more tips on how to make yourself much, much more effective. And LinkedIn is amazing because so few people are using it, yet it has such great reach. So I am just super excited about LinkedIn lately. And because I've been so active on LinkedIn, I have been seeing all these different posts advertising internships and other jobs. And then when you interact with those posts, when you click on them, when you like them, the algorithm picks up your activity and then it's going to give you more of what you want to see. So it becomes easy for you. You just check LinkedIn and you'll see these opportunities show up on your feed. You'll see these opportunities show up in your feed. So you definitely want to be on LinkedIn. You want to follow organizations that you want to intern with, as well as people who work for those organizations. A lot of the postings that I'm seeing are from people individually, like they're directly posting, I'm hiring for this position. Another way to find internships, which also coincides with getting internships, is to network. So many people do not network or they network effectively. And this is why I created my masterclass, Networking for Introverts. It is super affordable. It's only $47 or 3 payments of $17. And it teaches you how to network with people to get the results that you want, which of course is jobs and information leading up to jobs. And the thing that is so exciting about nowadays is that you really have the ability to connect with anyone in the world. I mean, it's really amazing. When I was graduating from high school and going to college, yes, we had the internet, but it's not like how it is today. You could go to chat rooms and talk to people, but I couldn't look up like specific professors at universities and write an email to them directly to their inbox. I would have had to find their college address and handwrite them a letter and send it. So really, there's no excuses for you guys. You have so much opportunity. And when I did an interview with Dr. Seth Magel, who is the director of the Urban Wildlife Institute at the Lincoln Park Zoo, after the podcast recording, we were chatting. And he was telling me it's those students who make the connection, who are really out there. And by out there, I don't mean physically out there. I mean digitally out there, putting themselves out there, connecting with people, making these connections. It is these people that are making things happen for them. I also have another podcast episode, Ensure Your Own Success, where I talk about Sarah Blakely. She is not a wildlife biologist. She's an entrepreneur. She's the founder of, but it is that kind of mentality that she uses that you need in this career because it is so competitive to make things happen for you. This is what I teach my students. And I also want you to check out Hannah's mom, who was one of my students, and now she's a student again because she got her master's and she's looking for jobs. She took my very first version of The Successful Wildlife Professional, which was called Confusion to Clarity. So now we're working together to get her a permanent job. But through networking, she reached out to professionals and she got an internship just by cold networking, reaching out to people that you don't know. So you want to use your network to find out about opportunities, but you have to do it in the right way. You can't beg for opportunities. When you come across too needy, that's a really big turnoff. So you want to make sure to get networking for introverts to learn how to do this effectively to get the results that you want. And it works. I've had so many students get results from networking. So you can use cold networking to find opportunities, but you can also use your own network. You can reach out to people you already know and ask them about opportunities. Let them know that you are looking for amazing internships if they have any leads. You really don't want to be passive about this. You want to take action. Let's talk about the steps to getting internships. The steps for getting internships when it comes to posted positions are the same as those for wildlife jobs. You need to qualify for the position and you need to write a compelling job application. It sounds simple, but it's not easy. You want to make sure that you are qualified for the internship. And these steps apply to wildlife jobs in general. A big mistake that people make is they apply. They think that the more that they apply, they're just going to get something. They think it's a numbers game, and this is incorrect. If you are not qualified for the position, you don't want to try to jam yourself into it and make yourself fit. It's just going to be a waste of time and energy. The good news is for internships is they're very entry, so it's really unlikely that you're not going to meet a lot of the requirements unless you're really, really just starting out. The job applications of internships are usually the same as regular jobs. They might have some sort of questionnaire or something, but usually it's two components, which include a resume or a CV and a cover letter. One of the biggest mistakes that people in wildlife, ecology, zoology, etc. fields make is that they have more of a business resume and not a wildlife resume. So if your resume looks like the one in the description below, I'm going to put a link to a resume. It's a fake resume that I made up, but it's based on so many people's resumes that either I've worked with or that they've me saying they can't get jobs. And I can see why, because their resume is not a wildlife resume. So I'm going to give you a link of that and you can see how yours compares. Wildlife resumes, they need to be much more detailed, much more in-depth, of course, aligned with wildlife experience and wildlife positions, or leveraging non-wildlife jobs to the same types of skills and experiences that you would need in wildlife jobs. This is way too much to cover here. If you're working on resumes only, it takes me 3 hours to cover this in the masterclass resume revamp. But if you want to work on your entire job application, I teach this in both the Successful Wildlife Professional and Wildlife Job Application Academy. Their Wildlife Job Application Academy is just one part of the Successful Wildlife Professional, but it is the same program. In the Successful Wildlife Professional, you get so much more. But in both programs, I teach you how to write a competitive wildlife job application. This includes resumes, CVs, understanding the job postings, breaking them down. You get templates, you get cover letters from me and my past students that were successful. And for some students, all we do is change the job application. That's it. We just change the job application and they get jobs. So the job application is super, 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 super important. I cannot emphasize this enough. I'll put the links to the programs in the show notes in the description below. You cannot follow general resume advice out there. You cannot follow career counselor advice out there. It just does not work for our field. I have seen this over and over again with my students. They give me the job applications that were not successful, and all we do is change their resume or CV and the cover letters. We don't change any experience, any education, nothing. And then they start getting jobs. Your job application is crucial. It is critical. It is so, so important. But like I said, it's way too much to cover here. If you take the full program, it is 5 trainings plus a bunch of additional resources like templates, my real cover letters that I've used, that my students have used. There's just so much. It's too much to go over here. But you need a competitive job application. For cover letters, you need to write a compelling cover letter, personalized to that organization and that job posting. You cannot just use generic cover letters. You cannot reuse the same one over and over again. You have to break it down. You have to break down the job posting, and this is what we do in those programs. You have to break down the job posting and show how you are the ideal candidate and you line up with what the things that they're looking for. And because wildlife fields are so competitive, this is true for internships too. Just because it's entry level, just because it's starting out, doesn't mean the competition is not high. You are going to have to spend time and work into it and align what you have done with the posting to really show them that you are the perfect person for the position. The other way to get an internship is, I mentioned previously, through networking. When you effectively cold network, you can get opportunities from this. And this includes unpaid, but also paid. So again, not many people are doing this. I would guess like less than 1%. So few people do this. They're intimidated by it. They're worried about it. They don't know how to do it. But this is so normal and it works. This advice really works. That includes how to find and get internships in wildlife fields. Next, we're going to talk about the different types of internships. There are paid internships, unpaid internships, and internships that you can pay to do. Are those experiences worth doing? We're going to go over all of that. Unpaid internships and internships that you have to pay for are currently a super hot topic. A lot of people think that these are unfair and that they exclude certain kinds of people from being able to participate in wildlife careers. I am going to set that aside. That is a super important issue that needs to be discussed, and I do talk about it in other places. I will put links in the descriptions and the show notes. But for here, I only want to talk about whether these opportunities are good for you and get you the outcomes that will lead you to a successful paid permanent job in your career, which is what you ultimately want. Again, I'm not going to discuss the ethics here. The reality is that these opportunities exist. People apply for them. And my role right here, right now, for this purpose is to help you navigate should you go for these types of opportunities. Should you even be applying to them? And if you get them, should you take them? Let's talk about paid internships first. Obviously, you want to get paid. We all want to get paid. And this goes as a no-brainer that this is the best one. But it's also the best in general for some other reasons. There was this study published in the Wildlife Society Bulletin by Karen Bailey et al. In 2022. It's called It Pays to Get Paid: Factors Influencing Wildlife-Related Employment Success. The results of this study showed that those who got paid for their work, now this applied to internships, but it also applied to jobs like temporary jobs, those who got paid were more likely to land permanent positions. This trend seems to uphold for other career paths as well. According to the National Association of Colleges Employers, the trends of the past few years show that paid interns have more offers pre-graduation and they get a higher starting salary than those who have unpaid internships or no internships at all. So getting paid is awesome because you get money, but it also seems to predict success. That being said, I would not take what applies to other careers to our field because our field is so different. And keep in mind that It Pays to Get Paid is just one study. The reason why getting paid is so important is not because you're putting on your resume that you're getting paid and people are like, oh, this person got paid. That's awesome. That means they do great work. No, it's that the paid jobs tended to provide people with the skills and experiences that were more desirable to employers later on. What I'm trying to say is that if you have an unpaid experience, it doesn't mean that it's not valuable. You can get valuable skills and experience in those unpaid positions, but you're more likely to get them in the paid positions. Let's talk about unpaid internships. A lot of people think that unpaid internships are unique to our field. They're not. According to the National Association of Colleges and Employers, about 57% of internships in 2024 were paid. The rest were unpaid. This is across all different careers. The reason why this can be common in conservation and wildlife fields is because our field doesn't have a lot of money in it. There's not a lot of money set aside by the government. With nonprofit organizations, especially smaller ones, they can be really strapped for cash. I have heard of situations where the highest level people aren't taking a salary, they aren't getting paid, because all of the money is going towards the nonprofits. And for some of us, we were put in positions where if we didn't have paid internships, we couldn't accept anyone to work with us. Speaking of my own experiences, when I was a postdoc, I worked my butt off to try to get funding to pay interns, but only once did it come through. And I would have people reach out to me asking if they could volunteer with me, if they could help me, if they could work with me. So I would tell them I didn't have the funds to pay them, but if they were still willing to, then we could arrange for an internship. Again, I'm not going to talk about the ethics here, but I want to say that it can be difficult from both sides. Over the course of my career, I've had 3 internships. I had one at the Bureau of Land Management in St. George, Utah. I had one at Disney's Animal Kingdom in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. And then I also worked for the School for Field Studies in Kenya. All of these internships were paid. The SFS one was the least paid. And honestly, it was kind of like volunteering because I was paid the same rate as the local Kenyans were. And I also had to pay for half of my airfare to get there. So by the time that all worked out, it was essentially like I didn't work. Those two things canceled each other out. That was essentially like an unpaid internship. I did have my housing and food provided for, so it was great from that perspective as well. I just moved there for a year and they took care of me when I was working, when I was at the field station. But if I traveled, of course, I wouldn't get fed or I would have to pay for my accommodation. Actually, the only time I was not paid for an internship was when I worked for a talent management company. This is when I was interested in becoming an actress. I interned with them over the summer before I graduated, and this was an unpaid internship, and this was a private business. And I have actually worked with coaches who have taught me in entrepreneuring, and they have run six-figure businesses and they did unpaid internships. Again, I'm not saying like one is right or one is wrong. We're not talking about that today. I just want you to know that unpaid internships are not unique to our field, that other organizations, even if they have money, they do them. The reasoning behind this is because that they feel that an internship is really a training opportunity. So they're not just directly hiring for work, they're really focusing on training that person. So it's like an investment. This is their rationale, just so we have a better understanding. So are unpaid internships valuable? Yes, but only if the skills and experiences that you're going to get from that internship help you in the career that you ultimately want to get. That is key. So what happened to me is I got my PhD and I did my research in Gabon on forest elephants. But when I was applying for jobs in the United States, working on forest elephants, although it was experience, it wasn't competitive experience for those in government work because there are no elephants here in the United States. So I just thought that experience was experience and that was important and that I could take the skills and the lessons that I learned from my field work abroad to the United States. But when the competition is so saturated, they can choose somebody who exactly matches that job. You want to think ahead. Again, attend the Becoming a Wildlife Professional free training series that I run. We go into this in detail and how to do this so that you can get the experience and skills you need and network and education for the job that you want. That is really critical. If an internship is not going to take you on that track, then you don't need it. It's not worth taking. And you might be able to get those skills in other ways. For example, if you really want to work on birds, there's a lot you can do with community science through eBird, for example. And I teach this to my students in the Successful Wildlife Professional. There's also a podcast app that you can refer to that I will link in the show notes and the description below. But you want to think about what you want. If you ultimately want to work on birds, you don't have to do an internship in Kenya on rhinos. Those two things are not the same. Think about your end goal and think in general about what opportunities are going to get you there. It doesn't have to be an internship and it can still be paid. It can be one of those paid field jobs. Just one more thing about the study, It Pays to Get Paid. They found that the paid positions provided the skills and the experience to set people up for paid permanent positions. But one thing they didn't look at was the job application aspect. And what I've found in working with my students is that you can have the same experience, but if you're not writing it in a way that really fully expresses your experience in your job application, the employers can't see what you're going to bring to the job. And in other words, they can't see your value. What I think is going on is that the more paid positions you have, the more experience you have. And that's really easy for employers to see that you have those skills, that you have those experience because you're listing all these different things. But what I'm arguing is that you can have a lot fewer experiences or fewer paid experiences and still be competitive when you write good job applications because you'll know how to word it and match the position that you're applying for. And that's what I found with my students. When they improve their job applications, they get jobs. Finally, let's talk about internships that you pay for. These are the least valuable in my opinion because of the nature of them. Because you are paying for it, it's also something that they are trying to sell to you, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but they want to make it as attractive as possible. So a lot of times with these experiences, it's tied into other things that make it more attractive, like travel. Or maybe when you are doing the research or experience, you're doing a bunch of different things. So you can learn a bunch of different things. Like you can learn radiotelemetry and how to collect dung for DNA analysis and how to band birds, all these different things, which you would think is great to have all that different experience. But when you're doing one thing for a really short period of time, it's really not experience. And because the employers know these positions are paid, it's also not going to be as competitive likely, meaning you might not even have to fill out an application. It's not something that you are selected to be doing in some cases. In some cases, you might. Also, a lot of times these positions are international, they're abroad, and they're short. They're only like 2 weeks. So if you're paying thousands of dollars of money and you're getting an experience that's only 2 weeks, and one day you're doing one thing and the next day you're doing another thing, you're really not building experience. It's more of a learning opportunity. Now, if you want to do these things because it sounds fun to you, you're excited about it, that's fine. But if you're doing it to get experience for employers, it's not going to put you over the edge. It's not going to provide you that experience. You're much better off saving your money and volunteering in your free time locally at organizations that can provide you with the skills and experience you need. This doesn't mean that it can't work out. If you listen to the Fancy Scientist podcast episode where I interviewed my friend and colleague, now Dr. Matt Snyder, he got his PhD. He started off with one of these internships that he paid for. We talk about this at length in that podcast, so I highly recommend you listen to that episode if you were interested in doing one of these experiences. Here are your next steps. Watch my video on my biggest tip. This will fully convey why understanding your endpoint is so crucial. I want you to dream about your ultimate career goal and start brainstorming internships that can give you the skills and experience to get you there. Make a list of the things that you want from not just internships, but experiences, and make a list of the things that will help you get your dream job in the long run. And definitely sign up for my Becoming a Wildlife Professional training series. This is hours of quality content that I have learned from my 20 years of being in the wildlife profession. I have been hired people, seen people of all different levels and all different job types be hired. I have worked for the government, in museums, alongside nonprofits, in academia, in zoos, all different types of work in all different types of work environments. And I have student successes to demonstrate that my advice works. I know my framework works, which is why I developed it based on their successes. So make sure that you sign up for that. Let me know what internships you want to apply to, which ones you are trying to get, what your dream internship is. You can reach me on all of my social channels. I'm on all of them at Fancy Scientist, and I am so excited to hear from you. If you're ready to get your dream internship, let's work together. Check out my programs page. I have options for you at all different levels for all different lengths of time, whether you want to be in my group mentoring program, The Successful Wildlife Professional, where I give you personalized advice. I give you 16 full weeks of training and group mentoring that allows you to develop a roadmap to lead you to your dream career in wildlife. I know you can do it because all you need is this framework, tenacity, and the belief in yourself that you can do it. I would love to work with you. You can also check out my master classes and other self-paced courses. Thank you so much. And if you found this video helpful, please share it. Please spread the word and let's get those internships.